quarters combat has become one of the defining and most dangerous aspects of the war in Ukraine, particularly in heavily contested urban and industrial zones. Among the Ukrainian units involved in such fighting, soldiers from the Azov Brigade have been frequently cited in battlefield reports describing intense, face-to-face engagements at extremely short distances. Unlike long-range artillery or drone warfare, close combat unfolds inside buildings, trenches, tunnels, and ruined factories. In these environments, visibility is limited, communication is difficult, and decisions are made in seconds. Soldiers often rely on small arms, grenades, and coordinated team movement rather than heavy weaponry. Urban centers such as Mariupol in earlier phases of the war and later frontline cities in eastern Ukraine have forced both sides into this kind of fighting. Destroyed infrastructure creates labyrinth-like conditions where opposing units can be separated by walls, floors, or even a single doorway. The Azov Brigade, originally formed in 2014 and later integrated into Ukraine's National Guard, has been repeatedly deployed in some of the most difficult defensive and counteroffensive operations. Ukrainian military officials and independent analysts note that Azov units receive extensive training in urban warfare, including room clearing, coordinated assaults, and defensive holdouts under siege conditions. This training has reportedly made Azov units effective in close-quarter scenarios, but it has also placed them in situations where combat becomes especially intense and personal. Such engagements often involve high risk and significant casualties on both sides. Military experts stress that close combat is brutal, not because of heroics or spectacle, but because of its physical and psychological toll. Soldiers operate under constant threat, often hearing the enemy before seeing them. The stress, exhaustion, and fear associated with these encounters can be overwhelming, even for experienced troops. International humanitarian organizations have repeatedly emphasized that all parties in the conflict are bound by the laws of war, regardless of the conditions or intensity of fighting. Close combat increases the risk of violations, making discipline and command control critically important. Footage and accounts of close-quarters fighting, sometimes shared on social media, are often edited, selective, or taken out of context. Analysts caution that such material can serve propaganda purposes and should not be treated as comprehensive representations of battlefield realities. What remains clear is that close-range combat highlights the human cost of the war more starkly than distant exchanges of fire. For soldiers on the ground, including those from Azov, these encounters are less about ideology or headlines and more about survival in some of the harshest conditions modern warfare can produce. The experiences of Azov soldiers in close combat are not unique, but reflect a wider reality facing many Ukrainian and Russian units alike. As the war continues, military observers note that urban and trench warfare is likely to remain a central and devastating feature of the conflict. In the end, the focus on brutal close combat serves as a reminder of the war's intensity and the profound human consequences behind every tactical engagement. After repeated failed large-scale attacks, Russian forces are shifting to dispersed infantry tactics in an effort to seize key positions across the Pokrovsk agglomeration, according to Ukraine's military. Ukrainian forces continue to hold off Russian attempts to advance in the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad sector as the Kremlin pushes to capture the remaining parts of Donetsk Oblast. A Ukrainian military unit operating in the area says Russian troops suffered 370 casualties over the past week, amid mounting losses and shifting assault tactics. Ukraine's 7th Air Assault Corps reported on January 19th that the defensive operation in the Pokrovsk urban agglomeration remains active. Since early December, Russia's 76th Pskov Air Assault Division, considered part of the operational reserve, has suffered significant losses during its repeated assault operations. These setbacks have forced Russia to bring in additional units to maintain offensive pressure. According to Ukrainian forces, Russia intends to replenish its losses near Pokrovsk in several stages by the end of January. Over the past week alone, Ukrainian troops have inflicted around 370 Russian casualties, combining both killed and injured, according to the report. In addition, 86 units of auto and motorcycle transport and 20 artillery pieces and self-propelled guns were either destroyed or damaged. Ukrainian forces also reported downing or disabling nearly 1,400 Russian strike drones. In Pokrovsk, Russian forces continue attempts to infiltrate the northern part of the city north of the railway line in small groups. However, Ukrainian countermeasures have reportedly prevented Russia from massing sufficient troops near the industrial zone in the city's northwest. As a result, Russian forces are unable to launch open assaults on Hrishine, which remains one of their priority objectives in the area, the report says. Instead of large-scale attacks, Russian troops are now operating in small infantry groups, using forested areas to try to approach Hrishine from the south. In neighboring Mirnohrad, Ukrainian forces continue to resist Russian attempts to push into the northern part of the city. The Ukrainian military also reported a noticeable buildup of Russian equipment near Novohordivka, located south of Mirnohrad. These forces are expected to support renewed assault efforts, including potential offensives targeting Upper Mirnohrad. Ukraine's defense forces are actively working to detect and destroy this military hardware before it can be used, the 7th Corps says. Ukraine may achieve a turning point in the war in its favor in 2026. To do so, it must fully leverage the potential of the Kramatorsk-Sloviansk agglomeration, into which Russia may attempt to push its offensive, according to Yevhen Diki, a former company commander of the Adar Battalion, Radio NV reports. The defense of Donetsk Oblast makes sense only alongside active work in the rear. From Ukraine, this will require mobilization, governance reforms, and strikes on Russian territory. From partners, continued weapons supplies. Dickey explains that if Russian forces move on Kostiantynivka in Donetsk Oblast, they could spend all of 2026 advancing within the Kramatorsk-Slovyansk agglomeration at enormous cost, only to become bogged down there. Dickey notes that Kostiantynivka was previously considered a strong rear hub, but today the enemy is already about 10 kilometers from the city. It is within range of Russian artillery, and drones are flying between residential buildings. According to him, the Moscow military has effectively acknowledged that it cannot break through along the Pokrovsk to Mirnohrad line. The situation there resembles Chasiv Yar, where Russian forces entered back in May 2024, but have been unable to make significant progress throughout 2024 and 2025.
Смотри, там двери сразу бери.